I'm Ishika Verma, a core member of the Azure developer community, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the fifth session of our Azure AI Engineer Associate Bootcamp. Before we dive in, I'd like to mention that we'll be announcing the winners of the last two sessions tomorrow. So make sure to join us then to celebrate the top contributors. Today's session will introduce you to the basics of developing natural language processing solutions with Azure AI Services. NLP is an essential part of AI, enabling machines to understand, interpret, and respond to human language. By the end of this session, you'll have a strong foundation for using Azure's NLP capabilities in your own projects. We are delighted to have Ayush Rathi with us today, a senior engineering manager at Walmart Global Tech, with his extensive expertise in NLP and cloud solutions. Ayush will guide us through the fundamentals and applications of NLP with Azure AI, including analyzed text, language understanding, and Q&A maker. Without further delay, let's get started. Ayush, over to you.
Thanks, Ishika. So let me quickly share the screen. Can you all see the slides?
No, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Perfect. So
visible
there we
now.
go. Perfect. So welcome everybody to getting started with the Azure AI speech service as part of the natural language processing capabilities that Azure offers you. Now, quick introduction about me. So I'm Ayush Rathi, a developer, designer, trainer, work as senior engineering manager at Walmart. So yeah, that's in short about me. So we'll quickly dive in into the generative AI and the Azure AI, and then how does the speech service can be leveraged for different NLP scenarios, where it's about text to speech to text, or captioning, and a lot more with that. Now, before we really dive in, let's quickly do a recap on what AI is. So, anybody, what do you think about AI? What do you think about AI? So, if we simply talk about the AI, right, it's primarily kind of visual perception, or it could be text analysis and analysis, it could be speech, it could be decision making service, right? So in general, when we say I mean, there are n number of definitions, right? It has been prevalent in the software industry for a long time. We are using it every day in different forms. It could be your digital assistant within your homes, or it could be your cell phones where you use things like it could be Siri, it could be Amazon Alexa or Google Assistant, and now you've got this Gemini, right? There is OpenAI. So whole lot of bunch of things where we are using AI day in day out. When we talk about automotive technologies within the vehicles, right, today we have got these connected cars. So again, AI kicks in. So again, it could be a smart productivity application which would help you to do more when you get there. So what really actually artificial intelligence is It's basically a capability where you can, or basically a software where it exhibits human-like capabilities. So there are a whole lot of bunch of different definitions available out there. It could be technical, it could be philosophical, but general terms, we tend to think of it as a software which can kind of exhibit human-like capabilities. Now, what are these human-like capabilities? It could be visual perception, it could be text analysis, it could be speech service, it could be decision making. Visual perception, as in something that you are able to see, accept, interpret it, and then you're able to process that input from the images. It could be video streams, it could be live cameras. Now today you would have seen lot of Wi-Fi cameras have started coming in, which are AI enabled. So what happens with those digital cams or Wi-Fi cameras is they're again surveillance monitoring system. But when you use them, there is an AI built in into it where it's trying to visualize what comes in front of the camera. So if it is a movement detected, it will immediately notify you. So let's say you're not at home and you have turned the camera on. Now, assume the moment camera detects some motion inside the house where nobody is there, it immediately triggers a alarm to you, a alert to you. So that is where comes the visual perception use cases in and around the AI. Second is text analysis and conversation. So when we talk about text analysis, it's again one of the very, very important aspect when we deal with the natural language processing. And it is not just about reading the text. At the same time, you're trying to generate some realistic responses. Also, you're trying to extract some semantic meaning from that text, right? So that is where text analysis becomes very, very important aspect of the NLP. You would have seen today a lot of applications have got OCR built in into it. Today, the mobile devices that we use, when you take a picture of an, let's say, a text document, you are able to simply select that entire text and are able to copy that text right from the image. How is that happening? Right? It's all happening through OCR. But it's trying to optically see that text, able to get that text out of that very image, right? Then we have got a speech service. Again, one of the very important aspect of the NLP. Now, when we talk about a speech, it is the ability where you're trying to recognize speech as the input, right? So uh, you give a speech as an input, and then you try to basically have that spoken output, which is more synthesized. So the combination of the speech capabilities, when it gets combined together with the ability where you can apply the NLP analysis of the text, you are able to have some kind of human computer interaction, which today is also called as conversational AI. And users will be able to interact with the AI agents. Earlier, we used to simply call them bots. Today, all these AI agents are coming in with different names, right? If some of you have used Copilot, you can create your own agent, and then you can basically feed in some sort of predefined questions, and then anybody will ask them the question related to that, it will automatically answer them. And that is what today we have started calling in as the agents. So these are again nothing but our earlier old school bots. Another thing that we have got is decision making. Now when it comes to decision making, you're trying to use some past experiences where that acts as a source of data, and from those past experiences there are also some learned correlations where you're trying to assess the situations, take appropriate actions, right? It could be simply something like there is a sensor reading um, system, and then you're trying to recognize some anomalies from that sensor reading system, and based on those anomalies you're trying to take automated action to prevent the failure, or it could be preventing some system damage. So all of these kind of capabilities that we talk about from a perspective of NLP or from a perspective of AI, they're going to help you in your everyday software applications. They're going to help you in your everyday life. It could be right from images to text to speech to having some kind of automated decision making based on the prefed data. So moving on, talking about quickly data science, machine learning, and AI. So all of these three things go hand in hand, right? So if we talk about data science, it's kind of an interdisciplinary field where you're trying to focus on processing and analysis of the data, where you do some kind of mathematical calculation, statistical techniques are used. You try to kind of discover different types of relationships and patterns within the data, and then you define those experimental models which are going to help you to explore different patterns. Then comes machine learning. Now, data science often will work with the machine learning models. So machine learning is something which deals with the training as well as validation of the predictive models. So in a typical scenario, what would happen is there will be a data scientist who prepares the data, and then this data is basically used to train a model based on some kind of algorithm, which will then exploit the relationship between, it could be features within the data, to predict different kind of values. That is where comes the machine learning. And then lastly, we have got the artificial intelligence. So when we talk about AI, it's more of a software which emulates one or more characteristics from an perspective of the human intelligence. So these are the three very, very important terms which are used hand in hand. Now, talking about generative AI, what is generative AI? Anybody, what is generative AI? Okay. Type of AI that can create new content like text, images, audio, music, and videos. Very correct. So today, generative AI has become very, very popular term, right? And all of us have been using it in one or another forms. A lot of you would be using Chat GPT, or you would be using Copilot or Gemini, which was earlier Bard, to do different set of operations, create different content. It could be text, it could be images, it could be music, it could be even videos, right? Today we have got a lot of bunch of different tools available, like there's Mid Journey, right? And a lot more, where you can kind of reimagine an entire image, right? If there is a car in the image, you can reimagine that car to some another car or something else. So that's where generative AI is coming, where you're trying to generate the content, right? So it's essentially more of like a superpowered copywriter or an artist which is kind of learning the underlying patterns of things, using that knowledge to generate entirely new creations. So generative AI today has become very, very prominent, where we are trying to use generative AI for different set of use cases. And within Azure also, we have got Azure OpenAI Studio, where you can create your own set of generative AI agents and then kind of play upon your own set of data. So one is, today when you're using different set of services like Copilot or ChatGPT, you're trying to use the preferred data that's available to them. But then assume there is a data that you have got available with you, which is, let's say, personal data, which you don't really want to kind of share with a broader set of audience, and you want to kind of build upon that data. That's where you can basically make use of Azure OpenAI Studio to deal with those kind of capabilities. So that's where comes the generative AI. So we will kind of look at the OpenAI Studio as well going forward. Now, how generative AI works is, you try to basically train on the data, then there is pattern recognition available, and then finally, based on the pattern recognition, it tries to do the content creation. So there is a whole lot of bunch of prefed data which is available, which is the training data that we call, right? And once the training data is basically available, there is some set of pattern recognition that happens on top of it. And then based on that pattern recognition, there is something called as content creation that will happen over and above this. So that is where primarily we have got the working of the generative AI in terms of uh, Azure OpenAI Studio. Now, moving on, when you use generative AI or when you simply use AI, right, including things related to natural language processing, it becomes very, very important for us to consider things with respect to building a responsible AI solution. So, when we talk about building a responsible AI, the first thing that is coming is fairness. Now, what does fairness mean? So, fairness means the AI system should be able to treat all people fairly. So, it should not happen that, let's say, you are creating a loan processing application which is based on some machine learning model. Now, the model should make predictions whether or not to give somebody a loan or whether the loan should be approved or not. Now, when we are talking about approving this loan, there has to be fairness considered. It should not be that loan approval is based on bias, something like gender, something like ethnicity, something related to other factors like who is having more capability to repay earlier, who is having less capability to pay. It should not be based on that factors, because in that case the results are going to be not proper, and there may be an unfair advantage or disadvantage to a specific group of applicants. So when you're trying to consider or create an AI solution, you should consider the fairness. Now, second thing that comes in is the reliability and safety. So it should also perform reliably and safely. Now think about, you purchase Tesla, and then now because you've purchased it, you may be completely relying, oh, this is a self-driven car, very, very popular. But at the end of the day, it is an AI-driven car, right? So it should be reliable and it should be safe. If it is an autonomous vehicle like Tesla, or there is a machine learning model which is basically being used by that car, it should ensure that it is reliable and it is safe. It should not happen that you sit in the car and then car is just dancing like anything, right? So that is where reliability and safety is very, very important. Similarly, think about an AI model that is being created to diagnose a patient's symptoms, and then based on the symptoms you're trying to recommend an automated prescription to the patient. And these kind of things are really happening. It's not that these kind of things are not really being built. Even when it comes to healthcare, these kind of things are actually being built. So reliability and safety is important. It should not be that patient has got some symptoms but the medicine that was recommended or prescription that was given was completely very, very different. Now, this example that I'm giving you of diagnosing the patient's symptoms and then recommending a prescription, this is where again NLP will come into picture. Because patient will give you some data, you read that data, or it could also be that patient has uploaded some reports based on the health checks that the patient has done. Now, how are you going to interpret that report? Right? There may be a lot of textual content. That is where natural language processing will also come into picture. So, based on that, you again recommend a prescription to the patient. Now, if there is an unreliability in these kind of systems, obviously they're going to result in substantial risk to the human life. Third comes privacy and security. Now, for privacy and security, again, I can take an example of Tesla because security is again important. Another thing is uh, there is large volumes of data on which your AI systems are relying. And this can also have personal details, which always have to be kept private. So, privacy and security from a perspective of your own personally identifiable information, your personal own data. So, even after models are trained, the system which is in production, it should use the new data to make the predictions or take action that may be subjected to privacy or security concerns. So at any point in time, even when you're using data to train your model, that PII data should always be protected. The customer content should always be protected. Fourth thing that we have got is inclusiveness. Now, when we talk about inclusiveness, AI system again should empower everyone and engage every person and people. So it should bring benefit to all parts of the society, regardless of physical ability, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or any other factor, right? So it should not be that solution is only available for one part of society but not another. So when you're trying to build solutions using, let's say, Azure OpenAI Studio, you get to configure and define whole lot of bunch of these kind of functionalities where you can make your agent or your respective AI service highly responsible, right? Then we have got transparency. So AI systems should be understandable. User should be kind of made fully aware of the purpose of the system, how it is working, what are the limitations, right? Now, again, when an AI system is based on a machine learning model, you should generally make users aware of factors which can affect the accuracy of the prediction. It could be something like number of cases which is used to train the model, or specific features that would kind of have most of the influence over the prediction. So transparency is again very very important part of it. Then we have got accountability. Now people have to be accountable for AI system. So when I say you're trying to use an Tesla car, which is an automated car, who is responsible for that? Is it you who have purchased the car, or is it the company who has built the car? Who will be the account? Who will have the accountability if that car fails? Who will have the accountability? It has to be with the company that have built it. It has to be with the people who have created that system. So you will have to take accountability at the same time for any solution that you're trying to build with respect to the AI. So moving on, so we talked about bias, we talked about errors, we talked about data that can be exposed, some solutions that may not work for everybody, and then again having trust when you're trying to have a complex system. So here's some of the examples. We talked about a loan approval system, we talked about an autonomous vehicle, we talked about medical diagnostic, not really bot, but we did talk about a prescription based system, right, where data may get exposed. And again, different countries have got different compliances with respect to health, with respect to different industries. Solution may not work for everyone, where we talk about home automation assistant provides no audio output for visually impaired user, right? So if there is an Alexa device with, let's say, a screen as well as audio capability, irrespective of whether a person is able to see or hear, Alexa will be able to respond to both, right? It will be able to provide an audio output as well as it will be able to give you a video output depending on what kind of device it is. Perfect. So moving on, when we talk about generative AI in Azure, there is Azure OpenAI service that we have got available, which is again Microsoft's cloud solution for you being able to deploy, you being able to customize, and then host different generative AI models. And it kind of brings together the best of the OpenAI's cutting edge models, and kind of, when I say cutting edge models, all the new models which are basically available, you get access to all of those models. Okay, so that's the advantage and the beauty of the Azure OpenAI service, where the moment a model is launched, it kind of quickly becomes available for you in the form of a preview and beta. So even with the chat GPT 4.0 or a 4.0 mini, even those kind of models are available for you to make use of. Any questions? Perfect, so we'll move on. So this is a very simple example of generative AI in Azure, where we try to integrate Azure speech service from an NLP standpoint, where there is also a translated text service, and then it kind of interacts back with the Azure OpenAI service. So there can be a user application UI UX, which kind of where, let's say, user will kind of ask something to the system, and then system basically will send back the response. So it's a very simple use case where you're making use of the Azure speech service, cognitive services, and then Azure translator text service. So basically, let's say if user wants to convert some text in English, and it needs to be converted to Hindi, user sends in that text as part of the Azure OpenAI service, and then we make use of a translator text service which converts that text back into a specific language that user has defined, and then give back the output. So this is a very simple use case where you can create your own translator service. I'm pretty sure most of you would have used Google Translator, right? So given this, when we talk about the natural language processing, The first thing that we have got is the text analysis. Then there are things like question and answering services. There are language understanding services. Translation services are there. Then there is custom text classification service. There are speech services. There are speech translation services. So most of these services that I've just talked about kind of forms the base for your NLP related services. So that's where comes the natural language processing capabilities that Azure offers you. Now, when it comes to the services on the cognitive front with respect to NLP, and specifically more focused towards text to speech and speech to text kind of service, this is where we have got different offerings with respect to language, speech, vision, and decision making. Our focus will be more towards the language service and the speech service. So, from an language perspective and the speech perspective, there is text analysis service, there is question and answering service, there is language understanding service, and then there is a translation service. From a speech perspective, you can do a speech recognition. So let's say a user has spoken something, you can basically recognize the text and do a whole lot of bunch of things on that. Once the text is recognized, you can do a synthesis on that text. Also, you can do speech translation. One of the very important things, and what I personally like, is the speaker recognition, which today, with respect to AI, has got whole lot of bunch of different use cases around available. Now, when we talk about the speaker recognition, today there are AI services which takes automated interviews. Now, assume there is an AI system which is taking the first round of interview of an candidate who is trying to appear for a job, and lot of times what would happen that there is not the actual user who is trying to attend the interview, but let's say somebody else is appearing for an interview on the actual user behalf. That is where the speaker recognition will silently detect on whether the user is a legitimate user or somebody else is actually sitting and kind of doing or giving the interview on the behalf of the person. So that is where the speaker recognition service also comes into picture. Now, when we talk about the language and speech, the translation of speech is built on the speech recognition, where it tries to recognize and transcribe the spoken input into a specific specified language, and again returns back the translation of the transcription in one or more of the other languages. So to use all of these services, the first thing that you have to do is basically provision an Azure resource with respect to the speech translation. So as part of this, what happens is we have got the Azure OpenAI, Azure AI Studio and Azure Speech Studio, where all of these services are tightly integrated, where you can use these capabilities of translating speech to text, text to speech, user analysis in terms of the speaker recognition, as well as speech translation. So, as part of the speech service, we have got a speech to text, text to speech, and then a speech translation. We are basically going to look at all of these services. Now, when it comes to speech to text, the pattern of the speech translation using the Azure AI Speech SDK is very, very similar to the speech recognition. So let's say if you're trying to build your own custom system, you have got a whole lot of bunch of different APIs that you can use, and use this speech to text service as part of the API. Apart from it, if you want to, let's say, just do a simple speech to text conversion where you have a video file, you want to provide that video file or an audio file as an input and want to generate the text from Azure, that is where also you can do an speech to text service utilization. So now before you actually start using these services, what's more important is to have the resource created for this. So we will actually look at deep diving into the hands-on of creating the Azure Speech Studios, AI Speech Studio service, and then making use of it. But before that, I'll quickly kind of walk you through some speech scenarios. So one is captioning. Now, when it comes to captioning, let's say you have got a video and you also want to see some captions. So you can have synchronization of the captions with your input audio, and then there will be some filters applied to it to get the partial results. And you can also apply different kinds of customization. You can identify what kind of language is being spoken from a perspective of you trying to give somebody a multilingual subtitles. So that is where captioning service can be used. Another thing is audio content creation. So there are different set of neural voices which are already available within the Azure Speech Studio. You can make use of a voice, and then you can basically try generating the audio content. Now this audio content can be used within different set of services. It could be your ebooks, it could be audiobooks, it could be you're trying to create some speech service where you ask something and then in return you get a response. So what kind of voice you want to use, so you can basically use it for audio content creation. Then there is a call center where you can transcribe the calls in real time, and then you can process a batch of calls. So it kind of will help you from an perspective of doing a sentimental analysis to help you understand the call center use cases. Sometimes, let's say, there are 100 or 200 customers which are all facing a same issue at a specific point in time. So that way, using this service, you can kind of do a batch processing of those calls to identify what kind of problem the users may be going through. Voice assistants, so you can create your own specific natural human like conversational interfaces or the voice assistant and embed that into the applications, and then it's going to give you a good fast reliable interaction between your devices as well as assistant implementation. And today if you look at there are some services that I mentioned, uh, right from Azure sales support to live captioning within their teams, doing subtitles and translation in PowerPoint, right? And then there is Cortana, um, there is read aloud available in Edge browser, dictation available in Windows. um, Again, there's commute available in your Outlook. So you can use these different services which are all kind of related to your speech to text and text to speech kind of scenario. So let's basically do a deep dive of how to provision this service and then how to basically make use of it. So let me share my screen. So I'm sharing my entire screen. I hope you can see the Azure portal. So guys, this is where we have got the Azure portal, and then as part of the Azure portal, you can go to all services. All services is a place where you will be able to see a whole lot of bunch of all the Azure services that Microsoft offers you. And here we have got different categories available. So in AI and machine learning, you will find all the services related to artificial intelligence and then machine learning. So here we have got AI search, there is computer vision, custom vision, face APIs, language service, right? There is document intelligence service where you can basically do the OCR where you're trying to understand and get some data from the document. Then there is content moderator, translator service, right? So we will basically look at provisioning this speech service. So to use the different set of offerings that I just talked about, the first thing that you have to do is create a speech resource. So you can basically click on create, and then it will basically ask you for certain details to provision this speech service. So first thing is you start with the subscription. Subscription basically is something to which your all the costing will be charged upon. So it's as simple as when you have to watch a movie on Netflix, what do you do first? You purchase a subscription, right? And you're charged on that subscription. So the same thing applies here. Whenever you are using an any Azure service, you should have a valid Azure subscription. It could be a free trial, it could be a pay as you go, it could be a enterprise subscription. So there are a whole lot of bunch of subscriptions. It could be even a student account. If you're a student, you are entitled for $100 per year until and unless you're able to validate your student identity again and again. You can renew it every year. So you get that $100 which you can use to use different set of Azure services. So I'm using a pay-as-you-go subscription. Second thing you have to do is create a resource group. So resource group is basically an entity which will have all the related resources for a solution together within that very group. So creation of a resource group in Azure is mandatory. You cannot have a resource in Azure which is not a part of the resource group. So every resource in Azure that you are creating, it has to mandatorily be a part of the resource group. And resource groups kind of make it much more easier for you to manage your entire set of resources. So I'll just use an existing resource group, which is basically text openai -rg. But if you want, you can actually create a new resource group as well by clicking on create new and just providing a name. It will create a new one. Let me use cognitive RG. Region. So Azure provides you more than 60 plus regions in 140 plus countries across the globe. So you can choose a region which is more closer to your customers, right? So that they get a low latency response. For example, for now, I go with Central India, and then we give a name to this service. Let's say I give the name as Ayush Speech Service, and then there are different pricing tiers. So there is a free F0 pricing tier, and then there is a standard S0 pricing tier. Free is not chargeable, standard S0 is chargeable. Then we go to next. This is where you can define the networking settings for your service. So by default, it is set to your allowing the network, including the internet and access from all the resources and services. This is an system assigned managed identity and user assigned managed identity that can be defined here, where you can grant the resource access to the existing resources. So whatever different resources you're creating in Azure, if those resources want to access this speech service for any specific use case, you can turn on the system assigned managed identity so that it will create an identity for those resources to basically make use of. And then this is where you define the tags. Tags are basically name value pairs. So always a good idea to create tags for your resources, specifically when it is an enterprise environment, because it then makes it very, very easy for you to filter out your resources as well as helps you from a billing standpoint. And then once you click on review and create, it will basically look at all the information input that you provided. And if the validation is successful, you will get this option to click on create and create this resource. So once you click on create, it will start creating this resource. I already have one resource created, so I'm not clicking on create, but that's how you can provision your speech service. Now you can see I've got one speech service already available, which is Tricks Cognitive. So I will go to this. And then this is where we have got the overview and then different set of options available. And that's where I have the option of a speech studio. I can actually go ahead and change the pricing tier from F0 to S0. So F0 will allow me to do a minimal set of things. You can see like it's speech to text. There is a limit on it, 5 hours per month of speech to text. So there are certain limitations when you basically make use of the free tier. So you can change between free and standard tier even after you have created or provisioned the service. Let's go to the speech studio. So once I click on go to speech studio, it will take me to the speech studio. So this is how the speech studio look like, where it says get started with a speech. If you are having any recent projects on which you have worked, it will show up over here. And then it gives you different capabilities by scenario. So like speech capabilities by use cases and scenario, like captioning with the speech to text, post call transcription and analytics that we talked about from a perspective of BPOs or call centers, live chat avatar where there will be a chat avatar which will be available that will basically do a speech. And then there is language learning. This is a new service which has added basically, which is in preview. So with this, you can kind of get instant feedback on pronunciation accuracy, or let's say it could be grammar or vocab from a perspective of the chatting experience that you do. So you kind of it corrects you when you're trying to learn a language. Then there is video translation. Again, this is a newly added thing, so it's in preview. So wherever you see preview, that means it is not yet generally available. Then speech to text, where there is real-time speech to text. There is whisper model available as part of the Azure OpenAI service. Again, this is newly added. Batch speech to text, custom speech service, pronunciation assessment with the speech to text, and then a speech translation. Whatever you speak can be converted into a different language. Similarly, text to speech. So there is voice gallery, there is custom voice, there is personal voice, there is audio content creation capabilities which are available for you. There is again text to speech avatar. So if I take you to voice gallery, you will be able to see different voices which are available as part of the Azure voice catalog, and you can use these voices for your solution. So you can see there are a whole lot of bunch of language options which are available for you, right? And then once you basically go, you will be able to filter in through different set of options, whether you need a female voice or a male voice or a neutral voice, what kind of age group the person should be who is speaking, capabilities like whether it should be content aware or multi-style or multilingual, what kind of speaking style are you looking at, somebody's doing a conversation, you want to have a angry voice, or somebody is very very cheerful while talking. So you've got whole lot of bunch of different options to generate that kind of content which is in line with the video. So let's say if I just play on this is a sample voice which is available. I hope all of you are able to hear this. Were you able to hear it? Were you able to hear the sound? Perfect. I see there are some questions. I'll just take these questions at the end of the session and help you understand all of these things. So you can basically choose through one of the voices where a whole lot of bunch of different choices are available with respect to voice. Going back, you've got the option of custom voice. So let's say if you want to create audio recordings in your own voice also, you can kind of start a custom voice project, speak through a lot of things, so Azure understands your voice and your tone, and then it kind of creates that voice for you which you can use within different set of services. Now there is an audio content creation service, so using this you can basically do a text to speech creation, right? So if I go to audio content creation service, and then let's say I'll just try to open an existing file, let's say introduction to cloud computing for example. Now I have got some content written over here, right? And I wanted to read this. So let's say I start from here and I have a voice selected of person called as Arya, which is a preferred voice available through Azure. So I want this to be read, or maybe I'll do a selection up to here. Right? And then the moment you add some text, right? Now if I say, so whatever text you basically add, it will basically generate that content for you. Now because I am in a free tier right now, I am being bounded by this 3000 characters per file limit. So therefore in this file I have more than 3000 characters. As a result, it is basically giving me this error. You can see the total characters in the file are 3479 while my limit is 3000. Now the thing is, from file you can basically add a new text file also. If you have a lexicon file, even you can add that. And once all of these things are basically done, you can export this. Now as I said, right now the export option will be disabled for me because my character limit is basically more. So what we will do is we'll just try to copy some small content from this and then create a new text file. And now we have a very very limited set of text available, just 354 characters. And now I can try two different voices. Now this is basically a German voice, right? So here I can basically change language and then select English, United States. Now also the good part here is, let's say if you are doing a conversation where you want to have a person is speaking in a different language, so let's say I select this, then I want to have another person who is speaking in different language, basically different, not the language but the voice. You can basically change, and this could be more of like a conversation one after the another, right? I think this voice that I've selected is not really English. So let's select Ava for this voice. And here again, I will change and select another voice. So Brian is a popular voice. It has a tag of popular. Perfect. So now you will see there are three different voices that I've put. So you can basically choose from different voices, and when there is, let's say, an interaction where, let's say, you want to do a script writing where there is different voices coming in between or interaction between two people, you are able to basically put up the dialogues, change the person language, similarly put the next person dialogue, change the language, and then kind of generate this. So there is an option of export. We'll save this. And then I can export this. Now you get two choices. You can export to audio library. Audio library is where it will store within the Azure Blob storage. So Azure Blob storage is Azure's very own storage solution, which is an object storage service, which will store your files. And then you can go to that Azure storage and download the file from there. Another is if you want to export it to your local disk, right? I don't want to store in Azure. I want to download it. So you get the choice whether you want to do an audio export or a plain text or an SSML, and then you can choose between mp3 and .wav, because there are a lot of applications which support .wav format. It also gives you an option of .wav or mp3. So let's say I select mp3. Now it is up to you whether you want one single file for the entire set of audios or the text, or you want a dialogue wise file. So if you look, or a paragraph wise file. So if you look at the first para is by Brian, second is by Ada, third is by Eva. If you need three files, you can also generate three files. If you just need one file, you can do a one single export. So I'm just doing a one single export right now. And then I can basically play through this and use it in any of my applications. So this is basically an text to speech service. Now there is an vice versa service also available where I provide the speech and I want to generate the text. So we go back to the speech studio, and this is where I have real-time speech to text. Now, as part of the real-time speech to text, you can choose a language. Now, this language is basically the language of the speech. So let's say if somebody has spoken in Germany and you are expecting the output, you will have to provide that thing over here. So there are advanced options as well where you can kind of define the language identification service to be on. And if it is on, it will automatically detect the language if you're not able to basically identify. Right. So there are certain advanced settings that you can define over here. Now let's say I will upload the file. So I'm uploading the same file that we downloaded. And from this file, now we are trying to basically get some text generated. So you can see it is basically reading through, and it has kind of started generating the text. Right, we have got the entire text again available for us. So that's how you can kind of use text to speech to text for different kind of natural language processing use cases, and then basically export this output, use this output in different set of application and use cases that you may have got. So that's primarily with respect to text to speech to text kind of use cases. We will look at more of hands-on in the upcoming session tomorrow. With this, I will actually open up for some of the questions that I see here. So let me stop sharing. Okay, the voice was not audible. Okay, so I think because I have an headset, it's not kind of showing in the voice. So I see a couple of questions. What are the key differences between text analysis versus the Azure AI language service? And when should we use these? Okay, this is a question from Vinay. So see, when we talk about both of these services, whether it is text analytics or it is about language service, both of them are part of the NLP, but they've got some different use cases. So text analysis, again, if I talk about the core features, it would be more of like a sentiment analysis that you want to do, or it could be something like you want to do a key phrase extraction, or you're trying to detect the language like we did right now, right? Text to speech to text, you're trying to detect the language of the text written, or you're trying to do some kind of named entity recognition. That is where you try to moreover use the text analysis. Now when it comes to AI language service, with this also you can do language detection, but moreover there are advanced features available like Q&A, summarize text summarization, text translation. So these are some of the specific services which are available as part of the AI language services, and these are highly customizable, highly flexible. The text to analysis service might not be very customizable, but when it comes to AI language service, it is highly customizable, highly flexible, and then it kind of gives you a good wide range of advanced NLP capabilities that you can use within your services. How does Azure Speech Service ensure data privacy and security when processing voice data, especially for sensitive industries like healthcare and finance? So, Hitesh, from that very perspective, Azure is compliant by default, compliant with most of the compliances that when it comes to data, whether it is about data privacy or security. And now, when you're talking about healthcare, obviously Azure is by default HIPAA compliant. Let's say, for example, if I talk about US, in US there is a HIPAA for healthcare. Similarly, there are specific finance related compliances which are available. So from that very perspective, Azure is anyway compliant. On contrary, when you say while it is doing the processing of the voice data, how is it ensuring the data privacy and security? So all the data relies within your own Azure subscription. Okay, so that data is not being kind of processed or shared from any another Azure service or another subscription. It all relies within your own subscription. So that way, when it comes to data privacy and security, it is with you. Another thing is that output that is generated, either you can download it on your local machine, or it basically saves it within the Azure blob storage. Now when it is saving that output in the blob storage, again you have got a whole lot of bunch of different security mechanisms that you can apply over there. Am I making sense? Okay, I see one more question. How does Azure text to speech service handle multilingual outputs? Right. So when it comes to Azure text to speech, it basically has option of providing with the multilingual output where you can basically uh, define different set of languages in which you want to basically get the output. and get that multilingual output with respect to the requirement. With respect to options available for customizing the voices and tones, so you can basically play around with lot of factors. So let me kind of reshare the screen and show you some of those things in terms of the customization. So let's say we go to custom speech, sorry, the audio content creation service, and then we basically created this Azure Dev community file. So from an perspective of what you have asked in terms of options available for customizing voices and tones, so these are different voice options which are available for you, different language options that are available for you. While you're speaking, you can basically have what kind of break do you want. Do you want it a standard break, advanced break, or custom? You can basically define different things over here. So there has to be a selection, and then basically you can define what kind of break do you want, right? So you can define your advanced settings as well here, and then have a break, so it will stop there. You can add a silence type. You can define the phoenix, right? So you can have phenom, and you can define those if you are very familiar with the how the pronunciation works. And so because what will happen is, when you choose a voice, not necessarily the pronunciation is exactly the same what you expect it to be, right? And depending on the country and region, the pronunciation for a single word will change. For example, if I just talk about Dehradun, the pronunciation will change. If the person in Germany is going to read this, they may kind of read it entirely different, right? So you can basically define those pronunciation over here, and then there are settings like rate, pitch, volume. So it's kind of quite customizable when it comes to different sort of options available. So diverse voice options available, language detection available, and then also when you export, you get an option to have SSML, which is, so SSML is speech synthesis markup language, which kind of allows you to explicitly define or specify the language of the specific text segments within your input. So those kind of customization options are available for you. Hope that helps. Any other questions? So good question, Hitesh. Good question, Ishika. And specifically, Hitesh, from a perspective of data privacy security, which today becomes one of the major concerns when it comes to AI or any industry. So by default, whenever it comes to data encryption, Azure has got data encrypted at rest, where it kind of uses FIPS 140-2 compliant 256-bit AES encryption when it comes to data in transit. All the data that's getting transited between your application and Azure speech service, that's also encrypted, making use of the TLS, which is again our industry standard protocol. Second, from a perspective of data minimization, there is a temporary storage that Azure will do, right? So that temporary storage will be there and kind of will follow process which is synchronous and asynchronous, and that's just for 48 hours from a perspective of debugging, and that is in terms of the data minimization. Apart from it, there is access control available in Azure from a security perspective. So not that anybody will be able to access the data. As I said, the data relies within your subscription. So anybody who only has access to your subscription, which is again something that you control using role-based access control, which is RBAC, you will basically be able to define who within your organization has an access to a specific Azure speech service. Within the organization also, I can define that level to an individual user. So it's not that I want to grant it to an entire group. Within your team also, if you say there are only two people working on this service who should have access to this service, only those two people will have access to service. And then, as I said, from a perspective of compliance and certification, Azure is kind of very much compliant with GDPR or HIPAA or SOC 2 or certifications like ISO 27001, or whether it is FedRAMP. Maybe I'll also kind of help you with a link around different set of compliances that Azure is compliant with. Perfect. So I hope you all have enjoyed the session. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Shika.
Thank you so much, Ayush, for sharing your insights on NLP and how we can leverage Azure AI services to develop intelligent language based application. Your expertise and examples were invaluable. And before we wrap up, here's a reminder about the goodies. To qualify for a chance to win exciting prizes, make sure to maintain a blog or maintain a GitHub repository for each session. Write Share your learnings on LinkedIn and Twitter, tagging Azure Developer Community, WizLabs, and Yash Katiyar. Engage actively in the live sessions and follow our social media channels. Deadline for the submission is Thursday, 2nd November, 11:59 p.m. Make sure to submit before the deadline. Stay updated by joining our social media channels and WhatsApp community. Scan the QR code on the screen to stay connected and never miss an announcement or event update. Remember, the top three participants to maintain the best blog or GitHub page will receive branded Microsoft goodies. Additionally, at the end of the bootcamp, the top 15 blogs or GitHub pages will receive a 1 month WizLab subscription. Thank you to our amazing team for their dedication and effort in organizing this bootcamp. We appreciate all your hard work. We look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow on the 27th of October for the second part of this session. We will dive into advanced language AI applications with Azure AI Services. It's going to be another exciting day, so don't miss it. Thank you once again to everyone for joining us today. We hope you found this session insightful and inspiring. Have a great day, and we'll see you all tomorrow at 12 p.m. on the same platform.